we'll be solving question number 2 of CIE May June 2024, paper 2. Now let's dive right into it. This question you can clearly see refers to a flow chart. So let's start solving that. I do believe we are aware of flow chart symbols, right? You know, this oval is for start stop. This sort of a parallelogram for input output. This diamond symbol is generally for our if else or could be potentially loops. Um, these symbols are our process boxes like the rectangle ones. And yeah, this is the end. And yeah, I think we've been through it and we all are aware of the errors and everything, all that jazz. That was just a quick recap. All right, now it says an algorithm for part of the program will input three numeric values. So a good way to do this again is make sure you underline the important stuff and then as you keep on going along with it just tick mark the things that have been taken care of. So input three values and assign them to identifiers num1, 2 and 3. I can clearly see this has already been none here, so this has been none. Assign the largest value to variable called answer. All right, so I want to find the largest value, and it's amongst three, and there are two diamond symbols. I can clearly see it's probably going to do what? It's going to compare, two numbers. It's actually going to compare two numbers with each other, and three numbers with each other basically, and assign what the largest one is. I mean, it's as simple as that. So the first thing I can do is that I want to figure it out what's the largest number. So I think let's go on with the most basic assumption. The most basic assumption I can go on with, I can say that if num1 and please bear in mind just like in pseudocode, I hope you know that just like in pseudocode, there is no exact wording that you have to use, there's no exact syntax. The similar is the case with flowcharts as well. In Python or any programming language that you're doing, C Sharp, Python, Visual Studio, in that the syntax matters, which means you have to be exact in what words you're using. But in this case it doesn't matter, so you don't have to worry about what exact words you're using. I mean, as long as it makes sense and as long as it follows the rules. So the first thing I can simply say that I can say that if num1 is greater than num2 and num1 is greater than num3, which means if number one is greater than both the numbers, then obviously num1 is the highest number, which it said that set the largest variable to answer. So I can say answer equals num1. Right. Similarly, if that's not the case, if num1 is not greater than num2 and num1 is not greater than num2, I can quickly go on and check the next one. So I can say if num2 is greater than num3 and excuse my handwriting, guys, it's not been the best anywhere. So is num2 if num2 is greater than that, then obviously num2 is the greatest value. So I can just say answer equals num2. And if none of this is the case, all right. If yes, yeah, okay, good thing I figured that out. You also need to write down these branch values that was missing this time around. So if num2 is greater than num3 and num2 is greater than num1, sorry, num2 is greater than num1, sorry, my bad. If num2 is greater than num1 and num2 is greater than num3, which means if the number 2 is greater than both of the numbers, it's the highest value. And if none of these is if not the case, if num1 is not the greatest and num2 is not the greatest, then automatically by default num3 is the greatest. So I'm just going to say answer equals num3. So we've actually done this part, so I'm just going to mark it. I'll put a message giving the largest value and the average of the three numeric values. All right. So I think it's clearly obvious that I have one process box and I have one input output box. So this is definitely last one is going to be the output box. So so in the process box, what I'll need to do is I'll need to calculate the average, and they've not given me any name, so I can use any name. So let's say I'm just gonna say average equals num1 plus num2 plus num3, and the whole I can divide it by 3. That gives me the average, and now I can just output. All right, I can output saying I can say output, or I could have even said print. Honestly, doesn't matter. I can say the average is and then I can say average, and then I can say and the max num is, and then I can say answer, and that's all right. Now please bear in mind that it says output a message giving the largest value in the average of numbers. Now sometimes people lose sort of a bit of a mark here and there sometimes when they don't give a good statement in the output. So it's generally a good practice to give a good statement in output, kind of clarifying what the output is about. All right, now let's move on to part B. Part B says that a different part of the program contains an algorithm represented by the following program. Uh, we have a certain program over here, and now before generally when we go on and do something like this, uh, you know, a pseudocode question, an algorithms question, a flowchart question or any question as a matter of fact, it's good to have a bit of a pre-knowledge about it before diving right into it, just to observe that. So just like we pointed out, just for our quick recap in memory, the different symbols, which are universal by the way, we have to follow them absolutely no matter where you are. Um, we can point out what symbols are used in here as well, just to get a quick idea about it. I think we just talked about all of them, so we know that. But this particular symbol, this one is for subroutines and functions. So I can clearly see that there is a subroutine and function being called in a few places, which means that um, I need to take care of it. And there is a slight sort of a mistake which I kind of feel like here, which is, using this symbol right here. I mean, if this is a confusion to you, I mean, is that this is just a particular process that's happening. No call to a particular function is being called in at this particular point. So this might be a bit of confusion, but generally you don't need to worry about something as long as you understand what's going on. So this is basically a process that's actually happening. So it should have been a simple process symbol. Anyway, it still doesn't really matter. Now that's one. Number two, before going on and writing my algorithm or my pseudocode, or even it could potentially come up as a Python code somewhere as well, in paper for something like that. Um, I would just want to see what's kind of going on. Now, I know at the back of my mind, I have not gone through it, but I know at the back of my mind that there are two diamond symbols, right? And I just refer to it. We know about that whenever there's a diamond symbol. Again, I'm just trying to do a bit of a pre-analysis before really delving into the question. I know for a fact that this is either going to be an if else or it could also be a loop, because I believe you do know that diamond symbols are generally used for checking a condition, and that is basically that could potentially happen in an if else, or that could also happen in a particular loop as well. All right, that's number one. And number two is that generally when we go on and observe this, and again that's just a bit of a pre-knowledge about it, is that if I see something like this, let me just put in different colors. So if I see something like this, so if I observe, I start tracing it all the way from here to here, so I can see like a loop, you know? Don't you think so? That's how I can figure out there's a loop. Which loop? Could be a for loop, could be a while loop, could be a repeat until loop. As a matter of fact, it could be any of them. But I can see that there is sort of a feedback kind of going on. So it's a loop. So something's repeating over a certain amount of time. So I can clearly see that there's one loop here. And if you observe this route as well, this thing, you see? So it's like a loop again. So I can clearly see there are two loops. One is the blue one and the other is the um, orange one. So this gives me some pre-knowledge that okay, there is going to be a loop, and I can clearly see that this orange loop sort of exists within this blue loop. So it's a nested loop. I mean, this is how pre-knowledge generally makes the process quicker to understand and quicker to go through. All right, now let's go on from the top. That's how I generally have answered questions myself since almost forever. So I'm gonna go on the top and try to observe what's going on. So start here. It is setting flag to get stat, which means this subroutine is being called, and that's assigning the value there, assigning the value to flag. Then it says is flag equals true, so it's checking something. If yes, it ends. If no, then all of this happens. So I think I can clearly see that because this blue thing is a loop, so I need to take care of this thing, and this thing keeps on repeating until flag is not equal to 2. So I can clearly see that there is a particular loop here. Now it just sets port to 1. That's simple. Then after that, I mean, basically this point onwards, if you see this point onwards, I made like that in orange already. There is another loop going on. It says is port equals to 4. So if the port equals 4, it goes back up and does everything again. Else, which means if that's not the case, it actually calls reset port, and then the port is uh, incremented by 1, and then it goes back. So I can clearly see if we start solving this. Let's start from the beginning. It is it's calling flag. So it says flag equals gets that. Now again, just I've repeated that, but then again, please remember that a little here and there in pseudocode, it does not matter because pseudocode does not have an exact way of panning out. So, if you're a bit here and there, that's fine in pseudocodes. All right, now it's checking is flag equals true. So I already know that this is going to be a loop because this keeps on happening until and unless flag is not true. So I'll actually say while flag is not equal to true, which means that as long as it's not equal to true, something's gonna happen. So I know there's a while and there's definitely going to be an end while later on. So yeah, that's the first thing. Then it says if it's yes, then it ends, which means it's going to go to the end while, which we'll write down at the end. Now it says is flag sorry, it says set port to 1. So I can clearly see it's just basically, making the port go equal to 1. So I can say what I can say, port equals 1. All right, indenting, remember, it makes the code look a lot cleaner. Now it says is port equals to 4. So I want to make sure, so that means the moment port goes equal to 4, all of this is actually going to stop. So let's do this. So I know, again, similarly like I did on top, I can use another while loop. I can say while port is not equal to 4. So while port is not equal to 4, what do I do? No, let's say go to no. It says call reset port. So I'm going to call reset port. So I'm just going to call reset port. So I'm just going to say, let's say reset port. And then what do I do? I may increment the port by 1. So port equals port plus 1. And then what do I do? I mean, I mean, this kind of keeps on happening. So I know for a fact that what I'm going to do is I am actually going to um, end while here, this while loop. This thing in orange that I actually had, I'm just gonna end it. So now think about it. We're saying while port is not equal to 4, so till it doesn't equal to 4, this loop keeps on repeating. So this orange thing keeps on repeating. Now what happens? Now let's follow the next path. It says what happens if the port goes equal to 4. So the moment it basically goes equal to 4, it goes back up and it again calls the flag to get stat. Sets the flag's value equal to get stat again. So let's do that within my while loop, the outer while loop. I'm going to do that. So I can say flag, sorry, I can say flag equals get stat. And then, I mean, what do I do? Then all of the check happens again. If it's no, all of the process is going to get repeated. If yes, it's going to end while. So I know it's actually going to end while. So basically, this was a very clear and obvious answer to this, and why using a while loop was a fairly simple and straightforward way of doing it. Why? Because in each of this, we have the basics that are there to be followed in while loop, and which is that a while loop. I mean, others, all loops have this similar, but they have their own structure. But just talking about a while loop, remember, a while loop has what? The first thing in it has is the condition initialization, where the condition is starting. Then obviously we have the loop itself, or you can say the loop condition. And then along with that, it has a condition update statement, which basically helps prevent infinite loop. So that basic your condition update statements, they ensure that your infinite loops are avoided. I mean, because if we do not have a condition update statement, a condition is not updated. So for example, in this case, flag would always probably, stay in a certain condition if I do that. Similarly, if I observe the inner while loop as well, it has the same structure. So there's a condition update, there is the loop or the condition itself, sorry, the condition initializer, there is a condition itself, the loop, and then I'm also updating the condition. So this makes it a perfect question in which you can use a while loop.